think he's been hanging out in the green room long enough. I think we can probably
delayed this long enough.
I did delay it long enough. I want to introduce the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend himself, the guy whose tagline is literally on every introduction. I'd like to welcome back to the stream Mr. Rick McElroy from VMWare Carbon Black. The real conversations with real people phrase is definitely a tribute to him. It's become a saying that's carried on throughout the stream. I want to thank you for bringing that up and conveying kind of what the stream is all about and kind of coining that. For those who aren't familiar with you, Rick, you're currently a principal cybersecurity strategist for VMware Carbon Black. You're also a former U.S. Marine veteran. Thank you very much for your service and sacrifice. Can you just real quick, for those who may be new to the stream or haven't met you before, Rick, can you kind of let the audience know what a principal cybersecurity strategist entails, who you are as a person, and just generally introduce yourself?
Yeah, definitely. It entails posting my face a lot on the internet.
You got a little bit of feedback. Did you? Oh, you got a little bit of feedback on your mic.
Let me try that again. Hello now.
No, nope. You still sound like a robot. That's your XDR. Your XDR is messing that up.
That's that better?
Nope. Uh-oh. It's
right now.
No, it's picking up your laptop or something. Uh-oh. We're gonna send you back over to the green room really quick. You're gonna send you back over to the green room really quick, fix that one out. Maybe leave and come back in on that one. We'll Rick's so nervous. Look, Rick's so nervous because he knows we're gonna talk about XDR, and he's not prepared for it, Jeff. He's not prepared.
Like, just waiting for your soapbox to begin.
He's like this is how I get out of talking about XDR right here. This is how I get out of it.
I desperately would have loved to have like a voice changer that made me sound like a robot right there. That would have been awesome.
Just do the whole stream as robots. We're just gonna do the whole stream as robots. While we wait for Rick to come back, listen. While we wait for Rick to come back, I have a super awesome, like the first secret that we're going to talk about tonight, Jeff.
You're going to do this without Rick?
It's a secret. It's the first secret we can do without Rick. Okay. This is a secret we can do without Rick. Exclusive I&E content for folks who are participating in this stream right now. Everybody listen up. There is going to be, you have to do something right now, or here in a few seconds when I tell you to do it. Everybody who is listening to me right now.
Simon says here.
Yeah.
Simon says.
Everybody who's listening to me right now is eligible to immediately go and sign up for the beta access to our Cloud Foundations course and cert. Hit -- beta in chat. Click on that link. And everybody who is hearing my voice right now can get entered into the wow, yes, I should have put a timer on that one. Yeah, I should have put the timer on that one. There is a form that you can fill out. Here's the thing. We are looking for, everybody can sign up for the beta. Everybody can sign up for the beta. This is obviously what I've been touting for a while. This is a cloud course, a Cloud Essentials fundamental course with a beta for the certification attached to it. We're ultimately looking for cloud newbies, people who, anybody who's got less than 6 months of experience in cloud in general. But outside of that, we want as many people to participate in this beta as possible. There's going to be two things. You're going to go to that first form. You're going to fill out that first form and you're going to submit it. When you get chosen for the beta, this is the second part that's incredibly important to listen to. When you are chosen for the beta, make sure that you select in the drop-down menu that you heard about the beta from the cyber insecurity stream. That is special and exclusive for everybody who is clicking on that link right now. Make sure you select that you came to the beta sign up from the cyber insecurity stream. The beta is completely for free. There's no sign up. There's no cost to the beta. The beta is totally for free. You just have to have a starter pass on the platform, and you can sign up. Now their spots are limited. We are only selecting 250 people. We're only selecting 250 people to participate in this beta. It is on a first come first serve basis. And so everybody who's hearing my voice now and signs up for the beta right now should, in theory, and I say this in theory, be able to get into it because some of you will be the first people to sign up for this beta. This is a perk that you all get for tuning into the cyber insecurity stream. Go sign up for that beta. Get some more free stuff. You all are awesome for tuning in. Thank you so very much.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. Free stuff, free training, breaking down those barriers. Look, here's my thing. Like, here's my ask, right, for people here. I want your feedback. There is a feedback form when you get access to the beta for every question. Give us some feedback. Give me some honest feedback about how many years you spent in cloud, what's your cloud knowledge, and what you thought about that question. That is incredibly important. Incredibly important. How long for the email? I think I heard from marketing that they're going to start sending out beta invites tomorrow. So this is the collection of people who are interested in the beta that's happening today. Beta invites will start going out tomorrow. So, already got an email? Wow. They've done an amazing job. Wow. That's awesome. Okay. So they clearly changed the automation on that one. So it looks like people are getting automatic. Congratulations.
Well done.
Congratulations. I love it when my team is that fast. Awesome. All right. So there you go. So I'll reiterate that a couple more times throughout the stream.
So you could answer it. How long? 17, 18 seconds.
17, 18 seconds. Listen, I tell you guys all this. I tell you guys and girls this all the time, right? There is no other company that gives you direct access to the chief content officer of the largest one of the largest training platforms that's out there. Because of your diligence, because of your attention, because of your participation in this community, this is a perk that you get. So grateful to be able to share that with you all. Let's see if Mr. It's collection. It's collection. It'll come back out. Let's see if Mr. Rick McElroy comes back in. Is he a robot?
Oh, I hope I'm good this time, Neil.
Yes, you are good. You are not a robot.
I got to say, though, you just
better.
broke my streak. You broke my pandemic streak. I had no issues the entire pandemic.
I mean,
now, boom, you broke it.
You can count on us to always make sure that we throw wrinkles into every conversation.
Hey, Rick, you can blame me. Neil always does anyway. Always my fault.
I mean, he is the sales guy. It is usually the sales guy's fault.
Right. It's always the sales guy.
So re-roll to the intro. Rick is awesome. Rick is also a former Marine. We won't hold that against him. Thank you for your service, Rick. Rick, can you introduce yourself and then kind of let the audience know a little bit about what a principal cybersecurity strategist entails?
Yeah, Principle Cybersecurity Strategist, VMWare Carbon Black. Essentially, I work with customers and prospects on maturing their security program in a number of different areas. So we act as trusted advisors. And then, of course, we have a big media-facing role. So you'll often see us on CNBC or, BBC News, CNN, all of that good stuff to really represent, I think, cyber to the public. And then, of course, internal. We have a huge role, which is to ensure that we have security DNA as a company and that we're continuing to do all of the right things that people would expect from a security vendor.
Is when we talk about that conversation to help organizations with their strategy, you'll appreciate this. The last time you were on the stream, the three of us had a lot of really great conversations. We had 2.5 hours worth of great conversations. One of the biggest pieces of feedback that I got after that stream the last time that you were on was there were a lot of people who were new to cybersecurity that listened to what we talked about from a strategic level, who admitted that they had no idea how big the cybersecurity pond was until that stream that we had. When you look back on the community, when you look back on cybersecurity as a whole, how do you help people understand that, like, who may be just solely focused on things like pen testing or blue teaming or incident response or GRC? What is it that you would convey to somebody to help them realize just how big cybersecurity is?
Yeah, I think the one thing I kind of say over and over again, and I hope some of us start to switch our language in cyber, is it's a safety issue, right? The physical and digital worlds are the same now. An impact of a ransomware attack drives up gas prices and causes Americans to put gas into plastic bags. Like those are all things that resulted from a cyber attack, right?
I don't think that's
so
what caused
I
the
think,
plastic bag thing, but I think something else caused that.
but it did happen, right? The memes were
It
amazing,
happened.
right?
It happened, but I don't think
Yeah,
that was the cause.
it happened. But I think that's like a good example of cyber and physical. Now our digital worlds are intermingled so closely that you can't really separate the two. And so for me, it's a safety issue, whether it's building infrastructure that supports a hospital or putting robots on the road to drive around at 150 miles an hour. It's a human safety issue.
Do you think that do you bring this up? Do you bring this human safety issue up because you feel like if we equate cyber to human health and safety, you feel like changing that language will make people care about it more?
I think people intrinsically care about safety, right? Like I don't think people would necessarily buy a vehicle without airbags or seat belts or turn signals or all of the stuff that is just part of it to take care of us as humans in case another human makes a mistake or we make a mistake. Generally speaking, we're able to save lives, looking at that, right? And so for me, when I go out to speak to the general public, right? So people who are impacted by cyber but not in cyber, I have to use things that they understand. And I think safety is one of those areas because there's a good chance if they work for an organization, there's a safety program inside of there, whether it's eye wash stations that we've all seen or a defibrillator that is in the coffee room. Like there's training around those safety aspects of just working in life, right? And so I use that analogy because I think people can relate to it, and then I can personally make cyber personal to them when I speak about here's how it impacts you from a healthcare perspective or from a banking perspective, because it's too big for most of us. It's too big for me sometimes, right? You take a step back and you go, this is crazy, all the things that are occurring in cyber. But I think if we can approach regular folks, to your point, man, I've seen so many people posting on LinkedIn about now they're in cyber. And dude, I have to say, kudos to you and the community for putting an emphasis on everybody belongs in cyber. And it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter where you are in the journey. If you have another job, these are all things we've been trained in. And it's not rocket science, right? Yeah, but I think one of the things we have a tendency to do, and I know I do this as well, I became mindful of it on the last time I came on, is things like acronym usage, getting too technical with problem statements. And what happens is it alienates the people that we're actually trying to get to take positive security steps. And so if we do that and alienate the people, like the normal people who click on stuff, referring to them as users, they're people. They're people, right? And so I think the language that we use when we go out to the public is important to help it be relatable, and then get someone to care about what we care about.
Do you think the problem that we have with language is because we came like we were inherently IT before we started in cyber, and in IT we had help desk issues and we had paper print errors and printer failures and people can't remember their passwords, and so because we came up out of IT, we just inherited a lot of that hate for users and that kind of degradation when it came to talking to them like that.
Yeah, I think a bit of that, and then I'll chalk it up to I don't know if I want to call this wizard syndrome or rock star syndrome, but this idea that you had special skills that other people didn't.
Yeah.
And then you kind of play into that with people, right? And I'll give you a brief example. When I used to tell people what I did in like the late 90s, it was too complicated. Like when I said data security or information assurance, they'd look at me and they're like, what are you talking about? When I said I'm a paid hacker and I break into things, they kind of instantly knew what I was talking about. And so,
and then they took a step back.
Right. Yeah. And then they have a bunch of questions, right? But it's like, I think a lot of us played up into that publicly, and that, yeah, I think previous generations of security professionals in some ways have hurt the cause, whether it was be in the office of no, which we, Neil, any CISO that you talk to inherited a shop where the last security professional who ran it was the office of no. And there's a whole lot of cleanup you got to do with that. And, yeah, culture you got to fix and all that good stuff.
When you talk like this, right, and this isn't the only thing we're going to talk about tonight, but just since this is what happens when we get Rick on the show, we start going down rabbit trails. But this is a good rabbit trail. I just saw one of our members of our community, very bravely reach out and share some imposter syndrome that they were feeling here lately in the cybersecurity industry. We have an entire channel dedicated to imposter syndrome on Discord. What you talk about, though, it sounds like those behaviors have contributed to the kind of, I don't want to say rise, but the predominance of imposter syndrome that we have inside of our industry. Can you help break down some of those barriers and talk about where you have felt your own imposter syndrome in this industry and how you've overcome it?
I suffer from imposter syndrome at a fairly high level. So I'm still waiting for people to kick me out of a room.
Which is really bad news for the rest of us, by the way.
Right. And I'm actually glad you brought it up. Yeah, I had probably 2 incidents today where I was like, what is going on? And I probably, look, I will say, I think if you start to look at the numbers around imposter syndrome, generally speaking, high performers have a high rate of imposter syndrome. And so part of me wants to say that due to the type of field it is, due to the people that it attracts anyway, those people would probably have a high rate of imposter syndrome. But now let's talk about early cybersecurity days and the separation between people who had the knowledge and people who didn't, and the way that used to work. You used to ask questions, whether it was on a bulletin board, some type of IRC channel. And people would yell at you. They would be like, "Get out of here, noob! You need to go learn more stuff." But there was no passing down of the information. And so I think a lot of us who went through that first kind of breach, we decided that that's lame, and that's not a way to actually address some of these problems. And so we have to look. One day, Neil, I'm going to be retired, right? I don't know when that day is going to be, but I need cyber professionals to pick up this flag for me, right? I need them to help secure the rest of my life, because at some point I'm getting off the train, right? And so, so I do think, people put on a lot of fronts. People put on a lot of masks in their professional careers. I can assure you that underneath those masks, underneath that calm exterior, there's a lot of nervousness. And certainly I think anyone who is leading a program or comparing themselves to other cyber professionals is going to feel that at some point. I mean, I'll tell you, we just hired an amazing new howler on our team, right? Just to tee Karen up a little bit. But yeah, the way she's hitting the ground running, I'm like, I gotta get back on, because you kind of get into a rhythm, right? And you're not able to go address some strategic things that you want to, and yeah. So I would say, for anybody dealing with imposter syndrome, just know that a lot of us are, and that you're going to have to manage that. But do I ever think you have a mastery of this thing that we call security? No. So just be okay with that. Always, you know what I mean? Always chase it, right? I think the education is good. I think chasing, trying to get to a point where you have a reasonable understanding. But in all honesty, something new is always going to come in that you're going to have to learn. And so just be okay that this whole career is a continual learning exercise. And that's all it is.
Would it be fair to say that everybody suffers from imposter syndrome, but the difference between maybe good, better, and best in this industry has nothing to do with how much you know now, but your ability to adapt to the changing world that's going to happen tomorrow? That's the key.
In my humble opinion, I often still quote, things from the Marine Corps, and one of them is improvise, adapt, and overcome. And my whole career has been improvisation, whether it's in a budget meeting, whether it's convincing another team that they have to do some work on our behalf and change their processes and workflows, adapting to what the attackers are doing, adapting to new defensive technology, adapting to changes inside of an org, and then overcoming limitations, overcoming trade-offs, overcoming, people turning you down on budget 5 times, and persevering through those things, right? Like I've been told no more times than I've been told yes in my career. But what do? You persevere, and then you wait for your opportunities, right? I think I can't stress this enough. One of the things that I see an opportunity for, I think, a lot of the professionals in the industry is to be ready. To actually pull back from your job, look around at your surround. What are the opportunities from a leadership perspective that are coming up? What are the opportunities external in the community? And then being prepared for when you get the nod, because it will happen. If you're in there doing work, somebody's going to put you in a spot that it's back to imposter syndrome. You're going to say, I'm not ready for. But they put you in there for a reason, right? You're going to have to learn some new skills. You're going to have to grow. You're going to have to stretch. But yeah, I think that's an area that is just being a little more mindful about taking advantage of opportunities as they present themselves, and then going and making opportunities as well.
That's awesome. I appreciate that small tangent. I think that we've not gotten to address that from you, but you talked about your challenges in the industry, and so I appreciate you going down that. As you know, Rick, Jeff and I have been co-host on the Wednesday streams for, God, what's it going on, like 9 months now, Jeff, and Jeff's become a real integral part of the streams, and so I appreciate you and the Carbon Black team for your continued support. And I'm excited, Rick. I don't know if you've heard the news or not yet at all. Maybe I'm the first one to share it with you, but I'm excited to announce as of today the partnership with VMware Carbon Black and the cyber and security stream. And so we are really extremely excited to have you and your team, your Howler team and the Carbon Black team as a partner, and excited to stream some of the content that we're going to get because of you guys. And so I want to personally thank you on behalf of my entire community. I want to welcome you into our partner program and say thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
You're more than welcome. And it was fairly easy. It was a real easy conversation. Paperwork's always hard in a big company, but the convincing people took about one email. So I would say that's a credit to this community, not to myself. Obviously, I paid attention, but I think the industry's paying attention as well. And the community being, I think, as vocal as you are, and then supportive as you are. I mean, I again, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. It's sort of my modality for security things. And man, what a way to uplift all kinds of people that are jumping into the industry. And I can't say how happy we are to be supportive of that cause.
Well, thank you. I thank you all for making this happen. I'm humbled and I'm excited. So we'll have more from Rick and his Howler team. I'm excited to be working closely with him. I've been friends with Rick for years, and I'm excited to see some of the stuff that we can share from the Howler side of this. I want to hop into a couple things. I'm gonna jump right into putting you on the hot seat. Like, I don't think I put you on the hot seat enough when you come into the stream. And so we're just gonna jump right into it.
So welcome.
It's not XDR. That comes later.
If you don't bring it up, I might.
Let's talk first. Let's talk first about vulnerabilities, specifically around VMware. We've seen a few of those pop up in InfoSec news here recently, and then, as ironic as we've seen Kaseya, and we talked a little bit about Kaseya a little bit last week as well. Kaseya being a supply chain attack on the industry, and then, kind of previous to that, Carbon Black itself had an authentication bypass vulnerability in their app control management server. So there's, it's not to say that VMware and Carbon Black are not both prime targets, both from a supply chain perspective or from their role that they play by protecting endpoints. And so, just so that we could put you a little bit on the hot seat, can you talk about how VMware and Carbon Black handle incidents like these, specifically around some of the vulnerabilities, and maybe what your role may or may not have played in a future Kaseya type of attack?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll start by I think the seriousness of what's happening right now in our supply chain. Certain threat actor groups, Advanced Persistent Threat Actor Group 29 specifically, that seems to be the niche that they're carving out for themselves, right? And I think, look, we could get into all the ramifications of why they're doing it, but it makes sense from an attacker's perspective to go after folks like SolarWinds, right? To go after folks like Kaseya. And certainly, I think, to have very sophisticated, very long recon efforts, right? And millions of dollars spent up front before an attack's executed, all of those things. And so, look, I think from a VMware perspective, we understand who we are, and we understand that we power the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Simply put, unless you're running another virtualized technology, you're probably running on ours, right? And that puts us, I think, in a good position and a bad position. We've talked about the good positions, that the advantage that gives us to seeing data, grabbing the visibility, being able to build prevention specifically built around all of those things. But it also makes us a big target, and we're quite aware of it. And I'll tell you how that manifests itself inside the company. First, I would tell you that the last two CEOs of the organization specifically have stood up in front of the company and not only made statements, which I think are important, right? And so I want to start with the tone at the top. The tone at the top is our largest customers are the DoD.
Mm-hmm.
We understand what that means,
mm-hmm.
right? We also understand that we're a software vendor with millions of lines of code.
Mm-hmm.
We understand that eventually
mm-hmm.
someone with a long enough timeline is going to find something in that,
mm-hmm.
right? Now, the things that I credit our organization for doing, and you know me, I'm pretty open and honest
mm-hmm.
about my evaluations of programs.
Yeah.
First off, we do like drink our own champagne, right? There are a number of different things that we do to thin out, right? To thin out our attack surface. I don't want to get into, product heavy stuff, but let's just say that I'm not in talking to customers about something other than we're doing internal to the company.
Mm-hmm.
Our experience being acquired as part of VMware,
mm-hmm.
I have to say, from a multi-factor authentication, from an endpoint perspective, very pleased. I get to work with the internal team on threat intelligence and threat intelligence sharing. It's a premier program. I see what they're doing. We do have specific partnerships with the U.S. government. We have specific partnerships with folks like the Secret Service, the FBI, for things like early intelligence. How does that manifest itself to customers? Well, look, in a lot of cases, we know what's happening from an attacker perspective as they're out targeting these things towards their initial footprints. We're then able to go make adjustments to the software, write the software patches, get those patches pushed out before the code's actually running around in the wild, right? And so now what we can't do is force people into updates.
Well, but
right? This is the challenge.
Let me push you on just one piece of that really quick, if you don't mind, though. Right? I think you and I generalize the you, but I think there's a lot of like Kaseya, SolarWinds, like there's a lot of that where it's like, I know we have policies, I know we have procedures, I know we're supposed to be doing those things, but to your point, with a long enough lead time, an attacker can find a hole. If there was an eventual hole that was found in a VMware or Carbon Black type of product, there are going to be people who look at you, and regardless of all the 99.9% things that you did right up until that point, there is that 0.1% of the things that you did wrong. Something fell through the hole. God, please don't ever let me hear Patrick Morley say it was an intern problem, right? Something like that that's going to cause an issue. What do you say to, when you're in that position, what is it that you say to your clients to bring that sense of confidence back, that the attacker only has to get right once and you have to get right 100% of the time?
Yeah, well, again, I think that's about transparency, right? And when I think we speak transparent, we mean it's not a SOC 2 report,
mm-hmm.
right? It's bringing people in to see the processes, right? To see how we work, to look at how we're actually developing code, how we're securing things like our source code, right? And I'll tell you areas that we're working on. I had a meeting with the CEO of SolarWinds, facilitated actually via conversation with the UN. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of weird. They were like, a lot of your recommendations for these things, these are the same things that SolarWinds are talking about. So I'm like, sweet, let's get together and talk about, as a group of manufacturers and people who write binaries, can we start to publish actual pipelines and frameworks that work, right? How do we know that process is starting to come together? Well, it's called Secure by Design. You can look at a group like KSG that Krebs and Alex Stamos have put together, mm-hmm. that are sort of leading that charge in the community. But I'll tell you, a lot of it is powered by us. Right. And so, look, I can take the opposite side of it. I was a customer of a couple security companies that had that happen to them. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that I was very vocal publicly Some of those people I started working with years later, right? And I think here's what you realize when you're on the vendor side. To your point, when an attacker wants to spend that amount of time and sophistication, something's probably going to happen at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not about just the recognition of that. It's like, okay, well, what are you going to do about that when it does occur in real time?
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to communicate it out to the community? How are you going to create a sense of urgency around the changes they need to make to their environment? And oh, by the way, understanding that it's going to take them some time because they got to get through enterprise change management on that, right? Like no one's going to go slap an emergency patch down on ESXi in 10 minutes.
Right.
Like that's not going to happen, right?
Right.
Especially when it probably represents a significant security change to the product. So I think there is an understanding that the supply chain is vulnerable, but I think again, it's about the communications process. It's about the transparency, and that's one of the things I did want to highlight. And to your point, I was a super Monday morning quarterback on this stuff, right? Like, why didn't you? Or why, how come you couldn't see the visibility, right? And that's super easy. But what I'll credit an organization like SolarWind, and specifically the direction the CEO has chosen on that, is they are being so transparent about this particular breach. And I haven't seen that out of the industry. And so I hope that the rest of us are just as open and transparent about that stuff when it does happen.
So
but would I tell you that there's zero risk of that today? No, absolutely not. I think, that would be that'd be a terrible statement to make, to say like, oh yeah, there'd never be a chance, right? But I can tell you, we have significant amount of detections that are deployed. There's a significant amount of adversary emulation that goes into it. All of the things you would expect, limiting access to source code, limiting access to cloud environments, right? And the process continues. So another thing that customers may have picked up on, a few things in our roadmap have shifted, as a result of just the changing times from attackers and the footprint, right? And so there are, in some cases, innovation that'll be held up so that we can ensure the next tactic that comes out from an attacker or the next 0 day, we're already ahead of it.
Let me ask you something really quick when it comes to the transparency, because I think I love the conversation around transparency, right? Because I think that is, I'm with you, right? I love your answer. This is why I think you and I gel so much, right? Because there is no 100% solution, right? Nobody is impervious to cyber attacks, right? We taught this years ago, right? It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And we've tried to coach CISOs and other organizations strategically to focus on their response and recovery strategies, because that is really where it's at. When you look at Kaseya and SolarWinds at just like the first half of 2021, who do you think was more transparent? Who do you think had the better response? And then I want to follow on with that and say, in the last 12 months, who do you think had the worst transparency and the worst response?
So the worst one, I might punt that question because
real conversations with real people, Rick. You can't punt.
Yeah. No, prior to coming over to a vendor, I would have real easy answers to those. And part of it is just because it's good people that are trying, and people make mistakes, right? So that being said, I'll caveat everything with, I do believe it's good people that are trying. People make mistakes, things happen. I think particular to upfront, it was a little weird with SolarWinds, and I understood why. The investigation's still going on. You've got government agencies involved. All that being said, post a lot of the investigations being wrapped up, going in front of Congress, continually standing up in front of the community and talking about changes and the rapid implementation of those, I will credit SolarWinds. I think one of the orgs that I'll say I think could step their game up a bit is Microsoft. Look, in a lot of these cases, it's all coming back to Active Directory services, right? Bloodhound and the fact that can be used 2 seconds after I get an initial foothold is ridiculous. For anybody that's out there, Bloodhound is a very cool tool that was crafted by some security researchers to essentially do credential harvesting and reconnaissance on Active Directory, and then use that to move around an environment. Look, we've got to all stand up and say, like, we could do a better job. So look, Microsoft's fairly transparent, but they've got some fundamental issues that I'd like to see them address publicly. And so particular to Kaseya, right? That's another one that I think the recommendation. So from a takeaway perspective, this recommendation that you should just exclude all kinds of things.
Oh my gosh.
From your security program.
Yeah.
Are going to come back and bite you.
Yeah.
And what bums me out, I think, the most about it is that was the model we used to do with antivirus, right? And we used to do with DLP is all these exclusions, and then that's the gap. And then of course I would drop something in the folder that you excluded. And here we are. And a lot of it has to do with the administrators of the products not being educated enough, or transitioning processes. But we're kind of doing the same thing we used to do, and it's coming back to bite us full circle again. And I think I like the direction Microsoft's heading. I definitely like the tone at the top of the company. But I think, look, they got to help the rest of us out. I mean, directory services and Exchange is out of control right now.
Rick, do you think that from a perspective of how transparent an organization is, as soon as they find out, like day zero, they just had the attack, don't you think they have to have active planning long before to say, okay, guys, how transparent are we going to be? And that has to be part of the upfront planning that goes into their breach plan?
Yes. And the security professionals inside of that organization are going to have to coach this organization to be transparent in most cases, right? And if you think about it, it makes sense from a corporate perspective to not be as transparent. You've got litigation that's going to happen.
They're run by lawyers. Exactly.
Yes.
Right. And one of the realities in information security that's different today than it was when we started is the legal component. And for many good reasons, right? It's not all bad. Like I need CPOs, I need general counsels, I need all of those things. But I think we have to work with them and coach them and show them examples in the industry that work, right? And of course, I'm not going to come out, and make a half data-driven decision in the middle of incident response, right? And that's part of the issue too. Is on the outside you have all this like, cottage industry of speculation that occurs in the industry too, right? So they want us on the news immediately. They want us on Twitter to what happened, and then it actually causes. I don't want to say it's purposeful misinformation, but there is misinformation that occurs, right? And so thinking about Colonial Pipeline, did they shut it down because they couldn't bill customers? Was it to protect their right? And that's all up to the organization itself, the state. But there's a lot of misinformation going around in real time.
Was their first call to the lawyers because they knew that it would be just not discoverable?
Most of the playbooks inside of a company are going to include one of the first calls from a compromise that moves to a breach is going to, I mean, I've been on those calls plenty of times.
Can confirm.
But to your point, Jeff, the work we did for 2.5 years, where we started off with a wonky tabletop, where I said, maybe we should look at a cyber attack as a disaster, start to bring together business continuity, disaster recovery, and these functions in a way that was realistic, and then move towards realistic testing of those plans, taking down parts of the infrastructure. That's a journey, right? But it's you have to put constant work into that, right? And so that's one of the challenges inside of a program is the CISOs that are tasked with the technical challenge, and then this challenge as well. And that is hard. And I commiserate a lot with that group of CISOs, because that's my group. It's like, that's where I come from, is you had to do it all, right? Yeah.
Do you see, when we talk about CISOs a little bit, obviously when we first started in cybersecurity, and I don't want to say when we first started in cybersecurity, when cybersecurity was in its more infancy than it is right now, I mean, the industry was, the corporate industry, not necessarily the cybersecurity industry, was very vicious towards CISOs that, hey, if you're a CISO during a cyber attack, you're out. Like, that's it, you're gone. With the increase of cyber attacks, we don't hear about CISOs getting the axe as much now as we used to. Do you think that that's because they're just kind of keeping it on the down low, or do you think the industry is starting to shift to where they're acceptant of the fact that it's not the CISO's fault for a breach to happen?
So I will tell you personally, I know someone who was just walked after actually battling the adversaries, but you are right from a percentage perspective. And one of the interesting things that I noticed, and I don't have an exact date on this, I'm gonna say right around 2010, 2011, there have been so many breaches. So there used to be this idea that CISOs had to have a perfect record,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That having a breach was bad for your resume.
Yes.
And it would be really hard to go convince, say, and I'm just going to make up a couple of names, right? But say I'm Bank A, and I go to get a job at Bank B. Well, if Bank A had a breach on my last watch, that was really, really bad.
Yeah.
Then what you saw is so many breaches occurred that the large organizations actually wanted CISOs who had been through a breach, right? That had a playbook for post-breach, because they knew the reality was it was probably going to happen to them, right?
Yeah.
And so I was encouraged that because it was such a bad standard to hold any professional to, right? I mean, there's a reason that like insurance exists for all kinds of professionals, right? But it's unreasonable to expect 100% efficacy rate on any job, right? So I was glad to see organizations actually bringing in people who had been through breaches. And now what you see is it's not a specialty, but you'll see it on a whole lot of job requirements that are out there.
Looks like we got a priority question coming through. It says, with your experience in cyber, Rick, how has your experience been with dealing with business marketing when trying to change their programs to include security?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, early in my career, very contentious relationships with marketing teams. And I'll speak as the desk of the CISO, not the desk of, what I do now, right? Because now I have a great relationship with marketing. But I saw the budgets that were going to marketing, and then I was like, this is ridiculous, right? Like, I know that it's brand building. I know I know it's customer acquisition. I know it's this stuff. But what upset me was we didn't include brand protection in that equation. And in fact, I would tell you, it was too early in InfoSec to have the conversation with marketing about that. Yeah. So now I would tell you that it's a way less contentious relationship with marketing teams internal to organizations than it's been. In fact, what I started to do, so what I started to do is spend a whole lot of time with our marketing team to understand how people were marketed to, because at the end of the day, security needs to be marketed inside of a company, right? You have awareness campaigns, you have marketing campaigns. But what I wanted people to do was be enrolled in my program, right? And marketing has a way to get people to take action, whether it's I saw a pair of Nikes and I'm going to go buy them, right? or
that's their whole business model, right?
Only you can prevent forest fires, right? Those. But my point being, when I sought out mentors in different fields, it actually started to have a remarkable impact on my program, right? So instead of me saying do all of these things, it was no. How can I pull people to us? How can I make it cool? How can I become present so it's something that they think about in a way that's not nagging, that's not a stick that you hit them over the head with. Now I'll speak in my role at Carbon Black, VMWare Carbon Black. One of the things that I wanted to make sure happened when I came over to this company was that we didn't do what a lot of marketing teams do, which is say we stop all of the things, we do all the things, all of this stuff.
Right.
And I'll be the first one to say I've missed on that mission a couple of times since I've been here, right? And it is what it is. When you have some marketers who come in from other industries, all that being said, what's awesome about how we work now, our thought leadership drives strategic marketing messaging, right? And we get to weigh in, but we see what we're doing from a marketing perspective, and our marketing team will say to us, does this resonate with security people? What is the community going to think about this? And so I'm truly humbled to be able to represent our community inside of a major manufacturer on security to say, look, no, if we go out and say this, like that's going to be a disaster, and we're not going to be perceived in the market as a true player in security. And that's like one of my true norths is that because I have friends like yourself, Neil, who will let me know if we go 1% off where our heart should be, right? And so I can only say that it was one of my fears being acquired.
Yeah.
Right. Frankly speaking, because I knew who we were as Carbon Black, and I've been so happy to see that not only carried forth from a VMware perspective, but just how much time internally we're spending on ensuring that security DNA is present in all of it.
Yeah. No, I think that's
you mentioned something really interesting there as far as marketing and branding. And one of the recurring themes we have on this is how do we enable teams to write a better executive report? And whether it is I need to get funding, well, I need to ensure that my business case has buy-in from multiple groups. One group we didn't even think about was marketing and branding, right? And I'd love your thoughts on how to get them on board from a security practitioner perspective to help them, get the budget necessary for securing the environment, protecting the brand.
This is where I put on my math hat and my Excel hat because I think generally speaking, it's a calculation, right? So what, I'll break this down as simply as possible. There's a cost to a breach, and the cost could start with something like the IR team that you bring in, right? That's a cost. You're going to have to bring in, professionals who are going to charge you $300 to $500 an hour. So now you can start to calculate, hey, 30 days of 2 folks coming in to figure out root cause. Now you've got a number. You're going to take that number. You're going to associate it with civil litigation that results. You're going to associate it with a loss of customers. And there's been a number of companies that have had this happen, so you can start to look at it. I don't like using necessarily the fear tactic of we're going to go out of business, right? I think that was a mistake
early on.
Early on.
Well, no, it was way beyond you. I mean, a lot of people built that into their ROI models.
Yeah. Totally. And then what happened? Well, Target didn't go out of business.
That's right.
And in fact, didn't lose any customers.
That's right.
So of course, a Walmart or a Costco would look at it and go, well, I can't factor I'm going into business. But for small and mediums, we have seen cases of this, right?
Yeah.
Insurance costs. What we've seen from insurers, so again, this is a big world that we play in. Insurance plays a role in it. They're raising the bar from an entry fee perspective. So they're either going to increase your cost to get insurance or mandate certain controls that you bring in prior to signing up for cyber insurance, right? So all that being said, when you start to go through your CISSP training, your CISM training, as you start to look at calculations around annual loss expectancies and those types of things, that will help you drive the financial conversation, because at the end of the day, it's a financial conversation with your business. And that's the conversation that as a technical person in this field, if you start to approach leadership in security, you're going to have to transition and pick those skills up. And I had to do it right around the director level. And so senior manager, director level, you'll start to pick up those skills, and hopefully you have a leader that'll train you in it too.
Let's put a finer point on that, right? Though, I mean, like as you go up in that, from that tactical level practitioner up into the chain of command, if you will, if we go back to our military terms, like there is a strong desire or strong need for the importance of understanding the business and understanding the business impact and the financials. Do you think that it is wasted effort? I'm gonna ask a very direct question. Is it wasted effort for somebody at the tactical level to start learning those skills early on in their career?
Absolutely not. I wish I would have done it sooner. It's actually something that I've in some cases forced my team into, and I don't say forced like I gave them an order, but I put them in situations to develop those skills on purpose. Whether it was a security engineer leading an effort that I thought he could get done, and stretching his skills, I would do that, right? And so maybe your boss isn't always transparent with you, because I often think about Mr. Miyagi in that case. You are learning karate, you just don't know it, right? I would tell you, I think if you go talk to any of my old teams, any of the people that I work with, it's something that I actually fault myself for not spending enough time on. And when I made that change, I saw a major difference in the amount I was able to achieve inside of an organization. And so again, if you're focused on your actual outcome, right, and your mission is securing an organization, at any level, then you should take action commensurate with that outcome. And those actions you take are going to change depending on the environment that you're in. And so your strategy may stay the same, but the tactics that you use to achieve that are going to have to vary depending on the organization. But the people equation of it is probably the most important thing. That's what's going to yield the most fruit for you.
Nice, makes sense. We are at the top of the hour, real quick, Rick and Jeff, and we have a nice set of giveaways to give away for tonight. I know Rick's got a special secret that he wants to share. I'm gonna ask Sec IT guy to set us up for our first giveaway tonight. The first giveaway that we're gonna do for everybody listening, it's open to everybody. I want to thank Josh Mason and his Supply Drop team for supplying us with a 6-month try Hack Me voucher. And so, that should be coming up on your, on your display right now. Hit that exclamation point raffle to get entered into a 6-month try Hack Me voucher. Listen very carefully. Rules are very strict on this. When the winner is announced in chat, this time you're going to message Sec IT guy with your email address and your name to get within 2 minutes to get your try Hack Me voucher. Rick, with that going, I want to come back around to the CISO conversation, and I want to ask you about a controversial article, and I'm sure you've read it. It was all over LinkedIn for a little while, and the only reason I asked this because we talked a little bit about the back and forth. There was obviously the Hill article that came through that said that quite the opposite, right? Is that you should, because of modern InfoSec, that these types of breaches happen at Colonial Pipeline, and that anybody who's been involved in a breach should be fired and banned from the industry for life. And it was written by academia. And so I want to ask you a different question, though, when it comes to that. Do you think that there is a disconnect when you look across the talent pool that exists in cybersecurity? Do you think that there is a discount between what is taught in academia and what is happening in the real world from a cybersecurity perspective in today's modern ecosystem?
So I'll generalize my first answer and say yes, and then I'll qualify that with there's some cool programs out there that are actually doing like capstone purple courses, blue on red, right? Some of that stuff. But I do fundamentally think that they're so when I see folks that like come out of traditional 4-year schools and programs, like for me, like there's some basics that are missing, like the OSI model and how does TCP/IP work, and like and I don't mean that to berate anybody because it's not their fault, right? That's the first thing that I'll say is like, but I was like, how does compute work? Right? Like I think to be reasonable at the technical side of InfoSec, you have to have a really strong fundamentals in compute. And I don't mean an EE or a CS degree, but fundamentally, like if you don't understand the OSI model, it's going to cause you some problems in your career. And there'll be some areas where you're like, I just don't get it, right? If you don't fundamentally understand TCP/IP and routing, like you got to get those skills right. So I do think there's there was a nice gap that was being filled by technical schools, but a lot of the schools have either rolled up or gone out of business, and that those types of things. But I thought there was a nice niche there. Now I will say some of the more advanced programs are doing some really cool stuff. The Hack for Defense program that is in a lot of research institutions across the U.S. I get to meet with some of those teams, talk about bleeding edge research. So if you're not familiar with the program, essentially the United States government and the DoD specifically will task teams to go build solutions for real world problems. And when I say real world problems, I mean actual problems that people have today, something like the identification of attacker infrastructure across the globe, these types of things, right? And then when you see the kids that are working on this stuff, Like I get all jazzed up about it, right? But so I think it does vary, but there is a gap. And look, companies have to eat a lot of the cost. Frankly speaking, advanced security education is expensive. And so any organization that is providing that for any person on this call, they should really highly value an organization that continues their education, continues to invest in them, and wants them to be the best professional possible. And so I know a lot of times every job has crap. Every job has crap. Right?
No, say it ain't so.
Like, every single place you go to, it's going to be a
Shades
different
of green, Rick.
flavor and smell. But yeah. But my point being, a lot of times companies are trying to do the right thing, and your managers and directors and leaders are investing in you, and that has a value. And that value might not always translate to your paycheck.
Yeah.
But it's a big number. I mean, SANS courses are not cheap.
No.
And I'm glad that a lot of the training that I went to, I didn't have to pay for out of pocket. But I would select jobs based on that, right?
Yeah.
So for anybody that's out there looking, like factor that in. How much time are they going to spend on you as well as a professional?
I think that's a really good point, because I lived that OSI model thing that you talked about when I took my first job at Fidelity. We hired 3 people directly out of college. They just all graduated from cybersecurity programs. And that was literally one of the first questions I asked them, was like, hey, just curious, did they teach the OSI model to you at any point in time during your 4-year degree? And their answer was like, no, what's the OSI model? And it did. It represented a huge uplift on our side from a new hire perspective, because we had to go back and teach them those fundamentals. And I do think that is something that's fundamentally lost, because I don't think that people really understand, that stuff is still valuable. It's valuable every day when you get into some of those technical roles.
Valuable every day. I can't speak enough of those fundamental building blocks I continue to use and continue to build on. And if I didn't have them, there's just certain roles in my career that would have been real tough to pull off.
Yeah. We're huge fans of getting back to basics here. Basics are incredibly important. Speaking of basics, I want to move over to a blog post that you wrote about crime at scale. I want to dive a little bit into that, but you thought I didn't read it, did you? You're like, oh shoot, Neil read a blog post of mine.
I am always surprised that people read or watch anything that I do. It always I'm still like, oh, thanks, I appreciate it.
Well, here we're gonna do you one even better. We're gonna drop the link inside of a chat.
Awesome. So I did want a quick caveat to this. This was a true team effort and represented our internal threat team, myself, and a few other folks on the VMware Carbon Black team that really worked together to rapidly get information out to our community. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want to take all the credit on, but I'll take for the purposes of this one.
For the purposes of being on Neil's stream, I'll take all the credit whatsoever.
Right. It was all me.
It was all me. I did everything.
Yeah. Much smarter people than me I get to work with.
I think this gets back to kind of the compromised MSPs and this is taken from a point of view, the article at whole. I'll kind of talk about it a little bit and then ask you a question, right? It's from the point of view of a compromised MSP. This is not a supply chain attack. The MSP's internet facing servers were compromised using a 0-day vulnerability that allowed the attackers to access the functionality of the Kaseya application. It's a case of remote to local exploitation, which was leveraged to perform additional malicious actions. And you go on to talk about this in comparison to Kaseya versus SolarWinds and the differences and things like that. Let's flip the script on this one a little bit, and let's compare this to EDR clients, for instance, right? How does Carbon Black as an EDR vendor evaluate potential 0 days and how they potentially could interact with EDR? And I'm not asking for anything trade secret, but when you see those 0 days hit out there, what does that process look like? What does that evaluation look like internally?
Yeah, so internally, there's a number of different processes that the threat team will actually do, right? So some of which include exploding in machine learning based sandboxes.
Oh, you said machine learning. You said machine learning.
That's another one of Neil's favorite words.
Well,
and by the way, Neil, You are
It's
totally
true.
asking for trade secrets.
Aw.
We just won't give them to you.
When you say machine learning, I know that you've got your marketing hat on. You don't actually really know the answer to that, Rick, because you said machine learning.
Oh, is that it? Oh, no, I know the answer to that one. It is, in fact, a supervised learning model.
Okay, so supervised,
Yeah, so no,
that's a better answer. Okay, supervised learning model. There we
see,
go.
see? I did not say AI. Then you can hang it on. Yeah, and so look, it includes things like emulation as well, right? But I would say it from a detection perspective, it depends on the 0 day. From a can it be detected in the wild,
Mm-hmm.
right? One good example of that was the 0 day that was leveraged against Microsoft RDP,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that was heap spray,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think was the 0 day itself, and so those activities can be seen, right? But again, it depends on the 0 day that's being executed, and then it really depends on the behaviors that they do from a follow-on perspective. But internally, other areas. So we have a part of our threat analysis unit are geared towards verticals, right? So
Mm-hmm.
one is national security, one is finance, healthcare. And so things that are newly observed inside of those environments, those are then pushed out as detections and or policy preventions in the product. But yeah, we're pretty fast about it. Although I would tell you, we're probably not going to be leading the research that will lead to someone else coming up with a proof of concept in the wild, right? We're focused on efficacy of our detections and efficacy of our products, and it manifests itself a little differently.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's I want to kind of piggyback that one onto a different one, because you used the word emulation there, and you used some other emulation stuff that has in some of the other conversations that we'd had earlier on in the stream. I want to pivot this around and talk about breach and attack simulation as an industry, right? And in full transparency, right, Attack IQ is a stream partner as well. They do support the stream, and so
Stefan's a good friend of mine.
Is he? Okay, I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
When we look at breach and attack simulation, and you talk about that threat emulation, how do you see the role of BAS transforming the cybersecurity landscape? And then a follow-up to that one is how does Carbon Black specifically utilize BAS internally to improve their detection engines, things like that?
Yeah, this is really cool. Like, it's a cool field, and I'll caveat it by saying I'm good friends with the entire Attack IQ team, and I'm also good friends with the co-founders of Randori,
Mm-hmm.
because they were co-founders of Carbon Black, right?
Yeah.
And so, interesting that an EDR group of people who founded the EDR market would move over and create, advanced simulations that are doing that, right? Look, all that being said, I'm actually geeked up about this particular industry and what it actually represents, right? So I'm going to forego a whole bunch of marketing and industry jargon and just talk about what do I get out of models like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, essentially what we're attempting to do as an industry is forego purple teaming,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and these are my people, the purple teams, right?
Yeah.
But look, it's a limited number of resources on both the red and blue side, right?
Right.
So, and we're also, we're like the number of people who can write actual 0 days or new techniques, tactics, and procedures are very finite on the planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And usually they're employed by people with giant, checks for them. So I think there's a huge role for technology to play in this idea of continual assessment, in this idea of continual emulation, right? And so we can break that down let's just talk about it in like a basic technique, right?
Mm-hmm.
So someone is attempting to steal my password off a Windows box.
Right.
Okay, cool. I should be able to emulate the finite number of ways that that's facilitated.
Mm-hmm.
For anybody interested in learning more about that, you can go see the MITRE ATT&CK framework and look up, right?
Right,
You can look
exactly.
up the finite number of credential harvesting techniques on a Windows box.
Right.
It's not, It's not thousands. It's not even hundreds. It's like 15.
And it's not magic. It's very publicly out there for anybody to go and read up on and understand.
It's generally Mimikatz and PWW,
Yeah.
like generally, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So then you say, well, why do I need a human to do that? Right? Like, can I do that at scale? And oh, by the way, if I can start to eliminate humans from that speak fundamentally a different language than my defensive team. So the whole point of purple teams, right, is red team's got to speak the same language as blue. Blue's got to get together with red so that as they're testing, I'm now tuning my defensive solutions to actually catch what they're doing.
Jesus Christ, it's almost like he watched my video. Holy cow. Holy cow.
And I did, right? but now let's remove the humans from this equation, right? So we don't need to go problem admiration on. We need more trained people. That's why you're all here. Future stuff.
Right.
If you rewind the tape a few years to like the grand DARPA challenge that occurred at DEF CON, the idea of truly autonomous systems attacking autonomous systems, I wasn't fascinated by that. What I was fascinated is there were some interesting things that came out of those exercises. Right? Like one of the servers started to pre-inoculate other nodes for no reason. And it turns out that shim was discovered by the offensive intelligence system. So, so how do we do this at scale? How do I continually tune my prevention and detection? Right? Well, I think this represents a good way to do that for very low cost and start to remove some of the humans, because I need those humans to go do other things. It's not like I can get to 0 people in my security program. It's just I've got work that I'm not getting to. We've talked about some of those, the culture, the people, the training, the awareness. That all takes time, and it's not a technical task. So I do think there's some really interesting stuff, and I'm looking forward to one of the cool things we get to have as an organization is our partnerships with academic research specific to security. And so I get a little peek of what's coming down 5-6 years down the road. And I don't think I would be wrong to say that at some point in the future, you have a software plane of security that understands threat intelligence and abstracts that threat intelligence into machine language that then writes a shim or a patch automatically. Like I can't tell you, like, is it 10, is it 15? I just know that at some point in the future, we're going to get there. And I think this is like our interim step towards that. So that's my rant about the space.
Let's put a little bit of a finer point on that. Do you see BAS as an industry, companies like Attack IQ, do you see that replacing the need for some of the third-party pen test, or maybe some of the ways that we've traditionally in the past done third-party penetration testing? Or do you think that they should just be there as an augmentation to kind of pen testing strategies?
I think my answer to this is going to depend on your budget. So I would tell you probably always need to bring in a red team. However, if you start to put a really good model around this and you're very thoughtful about your approach, you can maybe change the frequency of that. However, there's a lot of regulations that are going to mandate you're still going to have to bring in an external red team, which is fine. But when you think about the impact of those reports, the egg on the development team's faces, or the sysadmin who gets their password put in front of the CEO of the company. And I've been there too, right? Because one of the things I would never do while being red tested is remove security from the equipment. Like, we wouldn't take our systems offline.
Absolutely.
And if we relied on Active Directory like everybody else, well, it was a weakness to our program, and we had to know that, right?
Yep.
So end of rant on that, but. I do think it's a way to be more cost effective in the model. And again, when we start to, like, specific to Attack IQ, because I know that technology a little bit more, they actually have hooks into defensive products and can either make policy recommendations and or detection changes in those products. That's meaningful and really, really effing cool. Like, that's cool. Well, and I think that's the instant value of a product.
Well, and that was kind of the demo that Jeff and I taught Jeff purple teaming over 2 different episodes these last 3 weeks.
3 weeks ago.
Yeah. So Jeff and I are recent.
Rick is now very afraid that I'm going to go out and say I'm a purple teamer, but that's okay.
No way.
He wore a purple shirt last week. That's close enough.
I did, just for the cause.
One of the things that I drew when I talked about purple teaming, which I thought was one of the prime values that came from purple teaming was that fact that you could get to the end of a test cycle in the purple team process and quickly remediate issues that were discovered during the testing far faster than relying on the traditional pen test red team cycle to get those data points in.
Yeah, and so let me peel that a little bit. What does it normally look like when a red team comes in? It's a whole bunch of effort. People are trying to scope systems out of scope, so it's a bunch of work. And then effort's done, and now I have a PDF or I have some sort of report. Well, now I've got to distill that report to service owners, to business owners. So again, what I'm trying to do here is show people who are interested in the job or maybe haven't hit that level yet, like the work streams internal to a company, and it's a lot. So now I have identified vulnerabilities that are exploitable in my environment, and somebody's got to go fix them. I got to go get priority from somebody else's work, all of these things, right? And so it's cumbersome. It takes infinity too long to remediate some of these issues. And so to your point, the value you get out of your program is you can remediate them faster and you can move on because there's a bunch more that you got to get through.
I think one of the key things that I took away from it was it's all around business impact. Because if the red team is saying, cool, I now own this machine, it's mine. Yeah, we don't care. That's an irrelevant machine in our environment. It has no business impact. But if you can tie that loop just with pause, talk, right, between those teams, you now can understand what the business impact is of what that red teamer just did. And they're not going to write something stupid in an executive report that their executive is going to come find out, 3 weeks later that, well, that was a waste of time and energy. That was a useless machine that they popped. But if you can understand the business impact in real time. Yeah.
Yeah. And the impact to your program, right? So if you care about security is you just cried wolf, you asked a bunch of people to do work. They went off and did it and it had no value. Good luck asking the second and third time around if that's your model. Right. I don't say any of this stuff is like holier than thou. I've made those mistakes very early on. When you first start a program and you're end mapping a bunch of networks because no one knows the assets. Now you're scanning them. Great. Now I have 10,000 things for you to do, Neil. Yeah. And I'm going to drop them all into your ticket on the same exact day because my work's done as the security. That's a terrible
regardless of the priority of your other cases. Right.
But let's push this. Let's push this back over to what Jeff was going towards on the business side, though, because it's easy for us to sit around and pontificate on the technicalities of an attack IQ and breach and attack simulation and its impact on pen testing from the technical side. That's all stuff that we love to talk about. One of the things that I think becomes harder is how do you see technical solutions like breach and attack simulation holding up against the validation of some of the softer side control issues that come out of the GRC organization or IT audit or things like that?
Well, I think that's going to change over time. They're going to lag, but they'll catch up. I'll give you a perfect example. I got dinged one time on an audit for not having anti-malware on a server. Mm-hmm. Why? Because the auditor couldn't see the semantic logo. Mm-hmm. Now, what I had to explain to the auditor is, I'm using a positive security control vis-a-vis an application control product. That was not in a framework that anybody could audit. And it took, I think it was 2.5 years before it updated, right? So yeah, audits are going to lag a tiny bit. And then what will happen is the very large companies on earth will be the first ones to adopt technology like this. You can see from the customer lists that folks like Attack IQ have, that they are in fact like the Fortune 20 are adopting it. So the progressive, very thoughtful security programs that are forward thinking. Same thing happened with the EDR market. Same thing happened with next gen firewalls, right? Mm-hmm. And then it'll trickle down to the rest of us. So I do think there'll be a lag, but it'll change eventually over time because as long as the control proves to be realistic and auditable, well, great. Then it's just the audit teams don't understand the product or the technology, and they need a little bit of time with it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think those are the teams that think that technology either A, doesn't solve problems, or B, is out of their league, and so therefore they don't even want to deal with it.
Right.
Yeah. We've got one more giveaway to do, Rick, and I know you've got a special announcement that you wanted to share with the community. And so I think now is probably a good a time as any before we do our really, really, really big giveaway for tonight. So everybody listen up, because there's yet another opportunity, I think, to get something cool. I mean, like, I don't even have one of these, and I've been your best friend. Like, I've been your lifelong brother for, like, I don't know, like 15, 20, 900 years, and I don't even have one of these.
I do owe you one.
Yeah.
I do owe you one. I'm going to do just a tiny precursor.
Go for
Look,
it.
for anybody interested in information security, you have to get amongst your peers. And one of the best ways to get amongst your peers is to go to conferences. Sometimes you're going to have to fund that on your own. I did that for a number of years, but I wanted to go where the interesting conversations were occurring, and I wanted to be around the peers that were driving those conversations. And the only way to do that is to get around your peers, right? So that being said, I'm happy that DEF CON is a hybrid event this year, and that it'll be both in person and online. So there's an opportunity, if you can't make it to Vegas, to participate. Please do that. Jump on the Discords, do all of that good stuff. But my commitment to the community this year is anybody who finds me, I'll be there Thursday through Sunday of DEF CON. Thursday through Sunday, currently on the itinerary. I'm going to be posting pictures on Twitter because I like meeting up with all kinds of people while I'm in town. Love having conversations. You can ask me anything about cybersecurity, and I'll give you a rant on it. And I'll probably buy you a cold beverage, whatever that is, as well. But for anybody who doesn't have a military or veteran background, we're big on challenge coins.
Yes.
And so these are pretty exclusive. The Howler team had these made a few years ago. And I'll tell you, one of the places that you can find me for a while, the Blue Team Village, inside of DEF CON. You'll see me hanging out there. You'll find me in a few of the hacking villages. But I'm definitely going to be public. I'll definitely post it. Just come find me and have a conversation. I can't tell you enough how much it means for us to be engaged with the next generation of defenders. And we're really here for you. And so I'm a resource for the community. And so my commitment is anybody that does that, you get a challenge coin. And then anytime you see me on the road and present that coin, that can be redeemed for a tasty beverage, because that's how we do it.
That is quite
Rick,
awesome.
Real quick, explain what a howler is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the howlers are what we refer to ourselves as. So simply put, we run our mouths on behalf of security, on behalf of the community, to really bring this message out into the community. Now, how did we pick the name? For anybody who wants a great book series that's not InfoSec related, but I will assure you will change your life, the Red Rising series, which you can think of it as Game of Thrones in space in the future. There's a group in that book called the Howlers, and we absolutely ripped it off. We credit the author, but when you see the team and you start to hear their story, you'll understand why we call ourselves the Howlers.
We totally ripped off real conversations with real people. We get it. That's what we do.
Yeah, it's what we do around here.
I told you, I give stuff away for free all the time, and then feel free to take it. I don't need a TM on it.
So let's make sure everybody's aware of that. So hit ! Guest inside of chat right now. You can get Rick's socials, including his LinkedIn and his Twitter account. If you are headed to DEF CON this year, community challenge, let's see those pictures inside of Discord. We'll put a special spot for you inside of Discord for DEF CON pictures. Let's see those pictures of anybody who goes to DEF CON this year and is able to find Mr. Rick McElroy and get a picture with Rick McElroy, and we may use those for yet another giveaway at some point.
First 5 gets a VMware shirt.
Look at that. Jeff's giving away stuff. First 5 people that we see in
I'll
Discord.
have other goodies in my backpack too. I'll have, nice. I'll probably give away one of these as well. I didn't want to say anything, but this is a wearable Wi-Fi de-author, which is really cool. I'm probably going to give this away too. So why not? I'm going to just say I'm going to give it away too.
Look at that.
So yeah, come find me. And you have to tell me you're coming from cyber insecurity. So your code word is cyber insecurity. And then I will know that you're sourced from this wonderful community of people.
Awesome. I think that's completely fair. So there you go. There's everybody. So real quick, before I put you on the spot one more time and before we open it up to questions, this is a good time to remind everybody, now's a great time to get your question in if you haven't already gotten in a question in for Rick. I'm going to go ahead and ask SecIT Guy to run the INE giveaway. One of the partners that we did get announced this week as well is Query.ai. Andrew Maloney over at Query, he participated in an article online, and I didn't know he was going to do this. He was asked in his article what he sees that he needs to do from a big project perspective, and he sees that one of the most important things that he and Query, as well as a lot of other cybersecurity companies like VMware Carbon Black and a lot of other partners can do, is to give back to the community. And so we've partnered with Query. And they've volunteered as part of their partnership to give away one free I&E premium pass every month as part of their partnership. And so we're very grateful to them. That giveaway is running right now for anybody who receives that to get a 1-year premium pass for I&E. So good luck to everybody for that one. Last question out for you, Rick, and then I'm going to open it up for questions while that one's going on. This one as well, make sure if you are a winner, you do message Sec IT Guy for that, again, within that 2-minute time period that he says. As always, Rick, I'm always extremely happy to see that you believe that these artificial requirements on cybersecurity job listings is something that you disagree with. And I noticed that you shared Naomi Buckwater's LinkedIn post about removing degree requirements from cybersecurity jobs. Let's put you in the hot seat and say, how have things changed at Carbon Black when it comes to cybersecurity job listings?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, we just hired one. So what we actually did is we rewrote our rec. And what I enjoyed is our recruitment team coming to us and saying, well, wait a second, how can we change the language in the request itself, right? Things that you don't often think about as a technical security person who does security things. The language you use around an environment matters to the people that actually apply, right? So using something like fast-paced dynamic, that has a tendency to exclude women from actually applying for that job. These are things that I don't intrinsically know, but they're things that I want the best people to apply, and I want the widest group to be available, right? So even dropping hard requirements around the number of years and experience that people have to have in certain things, right? And so it's look, what it comes down to is that I think in a lot of cases, this is an area that I've seen security, I think, lead the way in for other teams. We can't get people through the initial phone screenings. And I don't speak of VMware. I'm just talking about my peers. And then you find out, well, wait a second, I screened out 5 people that I would have hired. That's ridiculous, right? So now we have to look at our behaviors, and we got to go coach our recruitment team. So generally speaking, I would say we have a big role to do internal to a company to help them because it will actually impact IT jobs. It'll impact the way that they limit gatekeeping for certain roles. And I think one of the big ones in cybersecurity, and I'll say this in IT, is that college degree. And it's not to say it's not important to be educated. But I know so many people who are better at this than me, that have many more years of experience than me. And look, traditional education failed them.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have a traditional 4-year degree. I got out of the Marine Corps and went to a technical college. And it's why should I then turn around and say, well, to do the job that I do now, you have to have it? No, you don't. What you need is some experience. I can't. Seat time is hard to make up for, right? Cycles of security pain are hard to make. That's just going to come with experience, right? I do think it's fairly exclusionary. And what I've noticed out of, a lot of companies, it's not even on purpose. It's because everything's a referral. Well, if I went to, Berkeley, or if I went to Stanford, of course I'm going to refer all the people I went to school with. That's just the circle of people that I know. Right. And so it's almost something like you have to make a conscious effort inside of an org to break that habit, and then say, well, wait a second, some of the best people I know inside, one of the best threat hunters that ever came out of Carbon Black, and I'm not going to embarrass her and drop her name, but she was in retail sales right before she came over to Carbon Black, and 3 years later, she's flying around the globe on major right? And
what set her apart? What set her apart that she was able to go from that to that?
Something. So I think she's actually done a talk on this, and hopefully I don't misremember this. Right. Something happened on her point of sale system that she was real curious about, and she kept pulling the thread, and that's what did it. And then she figured out, wow, that wasn't actually that hard to learn. And then it wasn't that hard to continue to pull the thread, especially when you're supported by good people around you, to get to that point, right? But I just thought that story in particular, I was like, listen, we got to make a bigger deal out of this in the industry. One of the best red teamers I know went to school for genetics for 2 years and then left because for a number of different reasons, right? And generally speaking, it wasn't that they weren't smart enough to get through the 4-year school, right? So I was happy to see someone else pick up that banner and start to talk about this too.
There's obviously like Naomi, Josh, Gerald, myself. We're all ringing this same bandwagon. So obviously it's a small echo chamber. If I were to put on devil's advocate, right, and try to poke holes in this one, I'd say things like, well, if I do that, then I get all these resumes of unqualified people, and then my recruiting team and my HR team can't keep up with the influx of people who are applying for these jobs. What is a message that you would send to, a room full of recruiters or a room full of HR people, or even maybe a room full of your peer CISOs that don't buy off on this need to drop gatekeeping? What's a core message that you'd send to them on why they should do it?
Yeah. So, before I answer that, I did want to say, look, I'm a member of a very large, affluent CISO community, and I would say I've seen 65 to 70% already make that change. And I mean, these are big CISOs, and I a lot of the conversations, like, I don't put, but this one in particular, they actually, I remember that being covered on a call, and then I was surprised on the Slack channel how many were posting jobs where they had removed it. And then I saw like 2 weeks later, Naaman puts it out. I'm like, okay, we've got some headwind here. Look, I think for HR, it's not a matter of, I would like the widest number of people that are, again, qualified, but I think saying to someone that they're not going to be a good security analyst or a good security engineer, especially in those early roles, based on a college degree, like, what are we doing, right? and so my advice to the recruitment teams is you're probably asking the wrong questions to qualify the candidates. And it's probably not your fault. It's our fault for not helping educate you on some of those questions. And some of the questions that I find, what do you do when you're stuck? Like, those are questions I ask during an interview. I want to hear people's thought processes about how they think, how they don't know something, and then they pull that information to them, right? Those are the types that, so I think we need to get into more, I don't want to say behavioral-based questioning, but like, it's probably what I'll say. But a little less out of like, do you know what port, because end of the day, I can look that up on Google. Like, why do I need to ask someone whether, they can respond to me on something that is publicly available and easily can be looked up in 2 seconds, right?
Yeah.
But are you hungry? What's your mindset solving puzzles? What do you do after you've thrown 6, 7, 8 hours at a problem and you don't know what to do? Like, what do you do when you don't have anybody you can talk to because you're in a skiff?
Right.
You're in a compartmentalized facility by yourself. And look, I don't expect somebody to have done that, but I want to hear their thought process, right? And so I think we got to get out of the technical checklists and into, understanding the person that's applying for the role.
I want to push you on one thing that you said that I want to get a really fine point on, and I want to congratulate really quick. S.Low for they're winning the I&E premium subscription care of Query.ai. Make sure you check out my LinkedIn for Patrick Maloney's name. I tagged him in the post when they became a partner. Send Patrick a note and a LinkedIn request and let Query.ai know that you appreciate their support of the cyber and security community. You mentioned the stick time, and that's something that I'm hugely passionate about, because I think one of the frustrating things that a person who's listening to this stream who is trying to get into the career field, they can go take certs all day long. I think with the advent of Udemy, Pluralsight, Cyberry, all sorts of content like this, the access to information compared to when you and I were coming up is plentiful. But what's not easy to get is the hands-on experience. And so I've oftentimes sent people to, programs like Try Hack Me, Hack the Box, Range Force, Security Blue Team Online, Security Labs, and things like that. If you're looking at an entry-level candidate, right? If you're looking at their resume and you know that they're entry level, would you view their participation in those online lab platforms on the red or the blue side or even the purple side, in the case of something like Attack IQ, would you view that as adequate enough stick time from an experience perspective to bring them into that entry level job?
Sometimes, and again, it depends on the role, right? I think another area to get actual experience, right? You're going to have to invest in yourself. You've already done that through self-learning and training. You went and got some certifications. Great. I can guarantee you that there are nonprofits in your neighborhood right now that need cyber help. I've randomly run into them sometimes when I'm working with them on another issue, right? Like this happened with Wounded Warriors in town, where I was just like down there doing my thing with Wounded Warriors. And then I was like, oh, wait, who's helping you out with these Wi-Fi passwords, right? So again, like I think there are volunteer opportunities as well. Do you necessarily get paid for those? No, I did so many jobs early in my career just to get the experience of saying that I did it so I could put it on my resume, and it paid off, right? That early investment in myself, I can guarantee will translate to your paycheck. Now let's talk about roles where those do factor in, and then where we start to miss a bit. I do see on the red team inside that you see people that too heavily participate in bug bounties and aren't necessarily rote in working with a team remotely, right? That's a key skill. I've seen and had a conversation with someone recently at a very large managed detection and response company where they're seeing skills that translate to a remote world, like managing large guilds in World of Warcraft. Now if you would have told me 20 years ago that people would value that from a hiring perspective in a remote world, I'd be like, what are we talking about? The reality is that actually does translate, especially when they're massive, right? So, think about it. You're rallying people to a common cause. You're getting them to show up on time. You're getting them to play their roles, right? Those are skills, right? And we all know the personalities that come with gaming are very similar to cybersecurity professionals, right?
Yeah.
So I think those are other areas that people can invest in themselves and then translate that into skills that a company's looking for.
So there you go. You heard it here first, folks. I want everybody's World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14, Guild Wars. I want all of that experience on your resume when we do these resume reviews on Saturday.
Like I was... And again, I was surprised. But when you take a step back and think about it, in a remote distributed world, that is a highly sought commodity to have teams that are highly effective remotely and lead those. Yeah, companies are looking for it.
Nice. All right, Rick. That's it for me pelting you with questions. I'm going to ask my mods to start pushing questions up on screen, and we're going to let the community pelt you with questions here for a little bit. So, are you ready?
Yeah, ask me anything.
All right. You heard that, folks. Ask him anything. Rick, you have seen CISOs have made the change, but what about the HR side? Are they still blocking, or are the CISOs overriding them when it comes to candidates?
In most cases inside of mature organizations, the hiring manager gets the final say.
When you say mature organizations, would you classify that as Fortune 100s, Fortune 50, Fortune 500 space? Where would you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, any company that has an HR team generally, and it isn't one person, the hiring manager gets the final say. Yeah. And in fact, I would tell you, in most cases, it's up to the hiring manager and the team. So you get an exclusion that a candidate may not meet some of the requirements that you put on the initial rec, right? We were real close. We had so many great candidates for this last Howler role. I wish I had, I hate turning down good people. I wish I had a couple more. But yeah, essentially one of the candidates didn't have one of the minor requirements, and we could have hired her anyway if we would have had multiple roles, right? So, yeah.
I think I think that's right. I think the disconnect when I see this question though is, to your point, the hiring manager does always have the final say, but it's oftentimes the hiring manager needs to push themselves through HR and recruiting to force HR and recruiting to step out of the way when it comes to making those hiring decisions.
Yeah, I've had that conversation multiple times with recruiters.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I appreciate your feedback, but this is the candidate, and we're going to make this offer.
Get out of my way. Get out of my way.
Yeah.
All right. Another one from BSEC says, what do you think about the news of the apparent full infrastructure of Revel going offline?
I think a couple of things. One, going back to this Kaseya attack, like where'd the 0 day come from? That's a good question that no one's answered, and we should all ask ourselves. I think it speaks to certain nation states allowing cyber criminal activity. I would argue that this recent takedown is probably related to conversations that are occurring at levels much higher than us. And I think for more strategic reasons that a bunch of us could probably start to peel out and understand. But yeah, that being said, I don't think they've gone anywhere. That's just my 2 cents. So here's how these cartels work. Right? Whether it's one person out of our evil or 2 people who are going to build a business model very similarly when it's taken out, like that's going to continue to happen until, that's just, it's a cycle with cybercrime. Like it's not going to end. Someone will show up tomorrow. I do this whole timeline of cybercrime, right? And, people forget Shadow Crew, which was like the first ones that kind of announced the whole thing, right? And then you can see these small iterations. If you start to look over the history of cybercrime, you start to see these small iterations that eventually result in as a service, ransomware as a service hacking, and now it's big business. And so I expect our evil will pop its head back up, and
that was like when RBN closed down back in the day. Like everybody was like, "Oh, RBN's no more. We're Russian Business Network. We're done. We don't have to worry about any more cyber attacks ever again." And
they're not on the French Riviera living in their dream. They're reconfiguring their group and calling themselves something different.
Yeah. Looks like
absolutely.
Looks like BSEC with the third question. If you have a boss that has never been on the IT technical side, how would you try to bring forth a security strategy so that they understand what you are trying to accomplish to help the company become more secure? BSEC struggles. BSEC's at a company that has struggled. Just to add some context to this, because I've had a lot of conversations with BSEC, and he's dealing with that leadership, Rick, that no matter what he brings forth, they're not hearing the ROI of security, even though they've already been hit by ransomware. They've already been a victim of cybercrime, and so he's definitely that level of VP that's like I can't get them to resonate with why we need security.
Yeah, it's tough, and I commiserate a lot with that because again, very early InfoSec days, no one cared, and so I think a couple of things here. Sometimes our approach to cybersecurity is to maybe say we're not always the best messenger, and it's not us, right? So I do find that sometimes bringing in external speakers, like one of the things I did to hack the humans in my org, I would bring in external security speakers, but I'm gonna put security in quotes, right? Because here's what they were talking about: cyberbullying for kids. And we're just going to have an open session that anybody can attend. Let's talk about identity theft. And it's an open session that anybody can attend. And they started to get attended, and people started to pay attention to security because it was very real cyberbullying for any parent in our company, right? That was a very real problem that back in those days was just way more. I mean, it still happens, but there was no controls on Facebook, none of that stuff, right? So I think you got to make it relevant to the individuals, and sometimes that means you got to hit them in that personal side. And so I would encourage anybody to start to look around that more broad cybersecurity community in the region that they're in the city that they're in, and bring some of those folks in. Lots of times legal teams are helpful to come in, especially if they run cyber practices. We're lucky in San Diego our federal magistrate will come out and do talks on behalf of cyber. And so I do think those things are helpful. And it, look, ego wise, it sucks to say, like, man, I tried 15 different tactics and 15 different, and I had this happen. I actually got laid off of a company. And what I thought I felt for months that I got fired, and I felt like I failed on the mission, and I really didn't. I just learned a bunch of stuff, but it was at that point where I was like, I can't get them to change their behavior. Like, they're aware, but I can't get them to change their behavior. And I tried speaking their language. I tried a bunch of different tactics. My next company, I iterated through that and started my more subversive technique of hitting people personally, and that seemed to have a bigger impact. And I would tell you that was an academic organization, and no one in academics cared.
I was going to say,
we hired a new president for one of the universities, and his first talk, and I swear this is true, his first talk in front of everyone, he holds his phone up and he says, "What are we, the NSA? You guys require me to have a pin on my phone?" He goes, "I can't unlock my phone while I'm driving." And I look at my boss, right, and I go, "We're not the NSA. I don't run my program like that. Like, I know this program, man. What?" But it just goes to show, right? This was, his level of understanding of security is if you required a 4-digit PIN on the phone,
right,
that was Department of Defense level security. But when we started to bring in, here's how platforms are abused, here's how people are cheating and fraud is occurring from a cyber perspective, then they cared, right? So you got to make it personal, I think, sometimes.
No, I
hope that helps.
I was gonna say, like, BSEC, let us know how that goes out. I think that's important. We had a strategy at one of the companies I worked at. It was like, protect the company, protect yourself, protect the company, and a lot of that education and awareness strategy was very much built around how do you protect yourself at home, in hopes that would eventually translate over into how to protect yourself at the company.
And BSEC, personally, you've advised your company of the risk. You've done your job, right? Like, you went to them, you've had the conversation. So personally, be okay that sometimes that's the result that you're going to get. But again, that be mindful of those opportunities when they show up. Have that plan ready, and then walk in with a plan to address whatever the failure may be in that case. And it does suck, like, personally, because we care about what we do, but it's a reality.
Yeah. Kirk Hollis says, do you think network security is dead as a whole due to SSL traffic? When you look at the wide range of attacks, endpoint security is really way more critical. Your thoughts?
No. However, I would tell you, I think VPNs are starting to die because we've done a pretty good job. I think modern app developers are doing a pretty good job with transport layer security. Like, go look at any of the apps that run on your phone as an example, right? So I think VPNs over time will start to be deprecated for better data security at the app layer. But what matters more? I work for an endpoint company. I know that 85% of the TTPs run on an endpoint, but it's not about that. Again, anchoring back in the full picture of what an attacker does. There's pieces all over the place. It's just a matter of putting those pieces together. So for me, I don't prioritize one over the other. What I want to demand is that they both have equal weight, because distributed denial of service is still a thing. SSL man in the middle is still, like, there's still a number of different things that we have better mitigations for, so the impacts are not felt as well as other areas. But I do certainly think that if I was going to start someplace, I want to ensure that the point of click is as clean as possible. And so, personally speaking, and I flopped my model. Like, I used to strictly, I'm an old school firewall guy, right? So I would just tell you that's just knowledge based on where the attackers have pivoted over time, right? But yeah, you got to blend both of them together to get the full picture in your environment.
How would that strategy change, or would it at all, with an emphasis being on the move to cloud in a post-COVID type world?
Yeah, well, point of visibility just changes, right? So if I run a workload on-prem, I need visibility into it. If it's in the cloud, I need visibility. But there's also, custom-built analytics around that, right? And so to plug another cool company that came out of Carbon Black, and one of the co-founders, like, Obsidian's clearly working on the visibility in the cloud issue, right? And they're not the only ones. I just happen to know them a little better than other products that are out there, right? But they're looking at closing that gap, because there's still a gap. right? It's not to say like, and cloud vendors are doing a bunch of stuff on behalf of security programs. But that's what people want. They want situational awareness. They want the full context of the picture. And to do that, it's a blend of a whole lot of data. And then the challenge becomes, how long do you keep the data, right? That'll be the game we're playing for a while, is how much do you keep, and what's the affordability of keeping it over time?
I think also that the movement of that data around the cloud has always been how a lot of those cloud providers lock you into there as well. So
sure.
Stuns and Roses says, how should someone react when they bring up easily fixable security issues, little to no cost, and the department they are part of laughs about the issue, for lack of a better term? How do you keep your morale up in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, that's everyday life in InfoSec. So again, you're going to have a bunch of conversations that yield no fruit and don't move the needle. But that doesn't mean you're going to stop having those conversations, right? That's not to say you're not going to change your approach. Look, one of the things I think worked for me is getting people out of the office. I used to go on walks with teams. I'd buy coffees for teams. And I didn't do any of that with a nefarious purpose. I did it all because I wanted to understand their challenges, right? So
you're building relationships with other teams.
Yeah, and how can I have them win?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how can I make them win and be secure? And so I think one of the things is like, maybe take a step back here, and start to understand, like, what does that team care about? Because you're speaking a different language than they are. And so that's probably why you're feeling what they feel. Secondarily, I would say, look to be a little more subversive inside of that business unit or that team or that department, and find some champions. There's probably someone in there who cares about security or cares about their future. I'm guessing this is referring to a dev team. That I would spend so much time with senior developers to get them to speak on my behalf for security, because the message was being delivered by them and not my team. They weren't being told what to do. People don't like being told what to do, right? And I think another mistake that I've made in my career is pointing out issues with things that someone else has bled for, that they've sweated for, that it took them thousands of hours to do, right? And I got this direct feedback from two network engineers I worked with that I truly consider friends now. They didn't like me for 6 months, and people like me. Like, if you can say whatever you want about me, people like me, right? But it really
no. Everybody likes you, Rick. Yeah.
Right. No, yeah. But like, it bummed me out. It bummed me out because I was.
You are such a jerk, Neil.
Right. Like, it bummed me out because I thought I had a better approach than that. And what I heard was, you came in and kicked our baby. Like, we built this thing, and you told us it was a piece of crap.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think we have to reflect on that and understand that, like, someone did care about the thing that they did, and we just happen to be pointing out the flaws in it, which is a very delicate thing to do.
When I hear that conversation, I struggle with a lot of different ways to look at this, right? Because, when we say like easily fixable security issue, right? Are there actually really things, when you're sitting on the dev side, or when you're sitting on the network engineer side, or when you're sitting on that somebody else's baby side, are there actually really things that are easily fixable security issues? Or is that because we have such a bad perception of what we think an easily fixable security issue is?
Sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes they're easy fixes. Sometimes, like, turn on SSL is an easy fix. Right, you can do that at your load balancer. You don't even have to do it in the app, right? Now, that being said, again, having an understanding of how much work that other team has, the demands that are put on that team, and then us jumping to the front of the line, we have to be very careful about that too, right? And so it's always easy to not own the service and point out something wrong with it, right? As customers, we do this all the time. Oh, Netflix is down again. I can't stream it, right? And then it's easy to go like, what do they do? But you don't think about all the amazing engineer that it takes for the rest of the time for them to be up, right?
Right.
So I do often say, if this is a struggle, like, just get in their world a little bit, and maybe it isn't as easy from their perspective as you think. I had an issue with like this is a very early issue with like how we were storing passwords in a database, right? You shouldn't do that now, but it used to be a thing with 3-tier apps.
Mm-hmm.
And it really had to do with how we were hashing and salting. And so what we did is we took the 2 teams in a room together and just had a hackathon, right? And we played around in our QA environment that was non-prod.
Mm-hmm.
And then after like 45 minutes, they were like, that was kind of easy. And we did move the needle. And then we were able to engage in a future conversation on that. But we put ourselves in the room with them to really understand their side of it.
Taking them on that journey with you, taking them really on that cybersecurity journey. Rick, are you good to go over a little bit longer? I mean,
dude.
You sure? You
Yeah,
sure?
dude.
Okay, yeah, we'll go. Jeff, are you
absolutely.
good, or do you got to run?
Yep.
Okay,
no, let's go.
We'll press on a little bit more. I mean, since you were a robot for like the first half of the stream, and we gotta get some of that time back.
Yeah, I gotta make up for it.
Yeah, Angry Amoeba. I guess this is pertaining back to your stance on dropping the degree requirements. Is Carbon Black hiring less than fully degreed folks right now? I think he's trying to say, are you hiring noobs? Currently, what kind of roles do you guys got open right now?
Yeah, so VMware, I think, just kicked back off their internship program. So we do have internship programs, and there are a boatload of jobs open.
Did you just say that you were giving away an internship live on the cyber insecurity stream? That's what it sounded like.
I did not say that.
Can I get a mod to rewind the tape and check that one really quick? That's what I thought he said.
I should have warned you about this one earlier, Rick.
No, but I like my friends that gently kick me. I'm gonna start digging into this internal and figure this one out. So give me some time.
Okay.
I don't have a direct answer on that, but I do think I think it's worthy of me putting some time in on that.
All right, you heard it here, folks. We may get a cyber insecurity internship program out of Carbon Black yet. Mac Attack Hacker says, would a VPN now mainly serve as a location obfuscation tool based on what you're saying about TLS and modern systems?
So no, I wouldn't say it mainly, although for consumers, generally speaking, I want to get to that UK Netflix content, right? Because I can't believe Star Trek Discovery is not available in the States on Netflix, but I digress. No.
For instance, just a random thought right there, I'm sure.
He's not researched that one at all.
No.
At all.
Hypothetically.
I travel a lot, and firewalls around the world and content filtering, it annoys me. Yeah, no. So look, again, I'm referencing changes that are currently occurring that will impact us at some point in the future. It's not to say you're going to see the next 2 months, everybody's like, VPNs are dead and we're turning them off. It's just, it's what it is with better application security. Because end of the day, the transport layer back to the OSI model should be accounted for as part of the application, right? And so there's a number of wonderful technologies that can do that for you and all that good stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Waiting on the next one to come through. There we go. Awesome. Bulgy Payload says, I work in sales for a company that does about 50 million a year in revenue, and they have no internal IT department. At what point should a small to medium company start thinking more about IT and security internally?
This is a depends question too, right? So what you see at a lot of the new tech startups is it's required. Like you're seeing the venture capital firms, because they understand the money they got wrapped up in it. They're like, yo, you better have a security program, and it better be auditable and have a SOC too. Which is, I think, really cool, because previous life was just like software was written, didn't matter if it was for security or not, right? So good on us. Other organizations, look, that's going to be a matter for the office of the CFO, the CEO, and whoever is in charge of risk. Now, a lot of times, small organizations, don't have that, but they do have an external legal counsel. So I would say great place to start on that to kick them. They should have cyber insurance, and going after cyber insurance will start that journey where they figure out that they have to have that. But I think that's a good place for leadership to start, because again, it's not you telling them it. It's their external insurance provider.
You've mentioned cyber insurance now twice on the stream, and I avoided it the first time, and I see Jeff cringing over there because he knows that's like a double trigger for me right there.
Soapbox.
No, I won't soapbox with Rick here. Neil's stance, cyber insurance is really bad risk deference, changed my mind.
Oh no, I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
But I think it's a tool that can be used, right? I look I look I
It
audit
needs to be a
teams
tool
and
instead of a
compliance
crutch,
teams.
though.
It's a tool I have in my tool belt to get my mission accomplished, right? So if I can convince compliance that DLP is good, and they can pay for that, like
Yeah.
I'm down on that journey,
Yeah.
right? So here, look, I used to think like insurance was this massive punt, and it's actually not. Like the more you get into it, because they've been making these giant payouts, right? So again, the scrutiny is going up, the amount of controls. In some cases, they're actually recommending like you should have this particular tool so that our IR partner, when they come in on the backside of a breach, can hit the ground running, those types of things. I think if you treat it as a pure risk transfer, and like you probably haven't educated your internal leaders in other functions enough. No, it
It will
should
be
not be treated as, you know, this is all we
It will be
need to
interesting
do.
to see if Kaseya changes some of those recommendations, though. Like,
Yeah.
I too have seen that recommendation thing happen, but you start getting a couple more of these supply chain attacks. It'll be interesting to see if they completely stop saying we're going to be prescriptive about this.
I think that's a very fair point, Jeff. That's a very good point.
That sounds like you want to get on a soapbox on that one, Rick?
No, I just think that like people should. It's a realistic. Like I don't know how else to say it other than like these groups are active, and they're active right now as we're on this stream, and they're working in a very focused manner. And so, when people ask me, are these splashy headlines? No, I expect it to pick up steam at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple big companies a week, right? And so for us as security professionals, we have to start these conversations now, because eventually the gaze of Sauron will be upon us, and it'll be our org. And hopefully we've gotten people to at least understand that it's a realistic threat today in the environment that we're in, and they've taken some steps about it, because not everybody's going to take everything that I that I would recommend, right?
Yeah. Back to the HR conversation. Tanawa says, how do we fix the filter to help HR determine how to even raise people up to the hiring? Oh, yeah. How do we fix the filter to raise people up to the hiring manager, though? So getting back to, getting down to breaking those gates and whatnot into organizations.
Multiple conversations for a while, and then it does get better. Again, I think level setting as a hiring manager, your expectations. I think the way we design the phone screeners could be largely improved. So chances are HR is asking some standard questions about InfoSec that someone gave them a while back. Take a look at those, weigh in on those, and you can actually start to loosen these based on the screening questions that HR has, right? So yeah, spend some time on the screening questions.
You said something about trying to solve the problems, earlier, a couple questions ago, building those relationships internally. One of the hardest things for me to learn coming up through the executive tier was the value of building that relationship. And it's not just like, hey, I'm Neil from security. What do you think about security? Can we go get a drink? And you have one conversation, and then you're expected to then come back the next day and be like, hey, look, I need you to fix that bug. It's like having a relationship. You have to work on it every day. You have to talk to them every day. You have to eat lunch with them, more than once a month, type of thing. You have to really be their friend inside the business. And I don't mean friend like go play golf with them outside the business, but you have to. It's not just like a one and done type of thing, right? When we talk about any of those relationships.
No, you have to be very consistent in your actions too. Right. So if you say you're going to do something as a team, you got to deliver on that. Right. I think to your point, you got to I have to care about their mission too. Because if I don't care about their mission, why are they going to care about mine? I got to invest some time in their people. I got to, our team shouldn't be seen as separate. We used to stand up at every operational stand up. right? Why it was important, whether or not there was something going on, it was important for us to be visible and seen as part of those teams, right? I think that's one of the things we do is like SOC teams are sitting in a SOC all the time. So, man, you got to take some of those folks and rotate them out to the business, right? You got to literally sit down with the other leaders and say, how can I help you win?
Yeah.
And if you can do that over time, man, you will get so much stuff done. And I'll credit a former CIO that I had for taking all the leaders in his org and throwing us in a room to basically bash the friction off for a while. Right. And there's a number of different techniques that were all of those things. But what we came out with is like we actually cared about each other as a group of leaders, and we cared about each other's success. And our boss monetized us based on that. Right. Yeah. So our bonuses weren't based on some, I delivered all my InfoSec projects. That was not my bonus. Right. So I think from a leadership perspective, you can start to incentivize behaviors that are better. But you got to wear off the friction and then be very consistent with the things you say and how you deliver over time. And I think once you can do that, you'll start to win people's trust. And then you'll move from not being in the room and invited to the conversations to critically in the room and part of the conversation from an ideation phase. And I will stipulate that all of that is going to take a steady hand over 5 to 7 years inside of an organization. Be patient. It's not something that you'll see instant returns on, but I can tell you when you hit the tipping point inside of an org, man, things start to hum faster. You start getting projects done, and it's worth the time.
The reason I bring that up is because, to your point about getting in the conversation with HR, I have found that relationship building isn't just limited to solving your cybersecurity technology problems. It is also with some of these corporate functions like HR and applying that same methodology to HR so that, to your point, you can then be in that HR conversation that says, hey, I don't need a degree. I don't need 5 years of experience with 4 certifications to make that happen. And so don't just apply that just on the technology side or just on the cybersecurity control side. Apply that also to some of these corporate functions as well.
HR should be one of your best friends.
Yeah.
And you're probably not spending enough time with them. And so go help them solve some. They got investigative challenges. Oh, we have data. I guarantee you, if you create a self-service model around employee investigations into things like email, and they know no one else has access to that, well, now you're starting to win because HR doesn't have to put in all these requests. They don't have to worry about someone in IT leaking this information, right? Those are the things that I mean about caring about what they care about and helping them win.
I think that is a really good point. Is that there are definitely opportunities for you to showcase how you could help HR that aren't necessarily things that they're thinking about right now.
Yep.
All right. So I'm being informed by my mods that a lot of the rest of the questions are more geared for me in terms of cert, degree, INE related stuff, and so I'll stick around and answer those after I send you on, Rick. Rick, I want to thank you again, as always, on behalf of my moderator team, on behalf of my community, on behalf of everybody here. For your participation in your quarterly appearance on the stream. Thank you so much for helping to facilitate the deal with Carbon Black to become a partner. The floor is yours, sir, if you would like to sign off and say anything to the team.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say, and I'll speak on behalf of us as defenders, as attackers, that do that ethically. No one's coming to fix us but us. This is all we got, right? So the community you're building now, I guarantee you is going to serve you through the rest of your career. I have been extremely lucky in my career to be surrounded by great people who push you towards greatness. So find those people, participate, be in the tribe, be active, be an active member. And this group of peers, again, that you're building, they're going to be the people that you text when you get stuck. They're going to be the people that you hit up on Slack and Discord. They're going to be the people that you seek out to have conversations you can't have publicly to try to solve some problems, right? But this is what I like about this particular community. So please take care of each other because it's a long career and we need each and every one of you to secure the future and make us safe moving forward. And I just wanted to thank everyone who does anything for InfoSec because I know how hard it is and I know how much time it takes away from our families. So thanks on behalf of all of us.
Thanks, Rick. You have a fantastic evening, and you and I will catch up later this week sometime. Send you on. Jeff, I can't even begin to say how much I love having Rick on the stream. He's
fantastic.
He's fantastic. It never fails. I think we're coming up on 1 year that we've had Rick on the stream, and he always has such great words of wisdom.
He was one of your first guests, wasn't he?
He was one of the first guests. Yeah. And I have to thank you. You introduced me to him. You recognized right off the bat that he and I would.
I saw him speak, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like you're brothers from different mothers.
I've done lots of panels with Rick. We've done conferences together. I definitely appreciate him quite a bit. Jeff, for up to the minute cybersecurity news, make sure you follow and subscribe to the Cyber and Security channel on Twitch and YouTube. Also, make sure you turn on those notifications so that you know when we go live.